Okay, I see our participation growing and good to see so many faces, friendly faces. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to you all. Let's actually just go ahead and get started today. Again, just make sure everyone, if I can just get a thumbs up that everyone can see my screen okay. Excellent, excellent. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the NeighborWorks of America networking session. My name is Ahmed Campbell, and I am the Director of Lending Development at Inclusiv, and I consider it a privilege and honor to introduce our partners from NeighborWorks of America. First, a little housekeeping. I'd like to ask that you please leave your cameras on so we can see you during the session. Also, just a quick reminder that the session is being recorded, and it will be made available with all the conference material post, I believe, probably within about the next 2 weeks. And it'll be available on Inclusiv's YouTube channel and at Inclusiv CU Networks. My esteemed colleague, Chriselle Martinez, will be monitoring the chat box. So feel free to put your comments, thoughts, ideas, and questions there throughout this session. So just want to share with you the agenda for today. Welcome and introductions. Want to review the partnership purpose as well as Inclusiv's commitment to affordable home ownership, NeighborWorks America and the NeighborWorks Network, followed by a facilitated discussion where we really want to just hear from you. So at this time, I'd like to make some introductions. Clearly you see that our esteemed leader, Kathy Mann, has joined us along with myself, but I want to make some introductions to the NeighborWorks team. Joining us from NeighborWorks of America today is Don Phoenix. He's the Regional Vice President of the Southern Region. The rich career of Donald Phoenix includes experience in many sectors, including banking, public administration, nonprofit management, and housing development. He served as Vice President of Carver State Bank of Savannah, Georgia, and Assistant Vice President of Great Southern Federal Savings Bank in the same city. Transitioned to Housing Director for the City of Savannah, became Executive Director for Neighborhood Housing Services of Savannah, and then joined NeighborWorks in 1995, where he is based in Atlanta today. As Vice President of NeighborWorks Southern Region, Don is responsible for overseeing financial and technical services for network organizations throughout 13 states and the District of Columbia. He also led the organization's Gulf Coast rebuilding efforts in the wake of Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. Also from NeighborWorks team, we have Dr. Christie Cade, Senior Director of the Southern Region. As the Southern Region Senior Director, Christie directs the deployment of NeighborWorks America's financial and technical services throughout 13 states in the Southeast region of the United States and District of Columbia. Christie has over 30 years of progressive leadership experience in the arenas of real estate development and financing, mortgage lending, corporate strategies and growth, business development and financial management, board governance, and leading high-performance teams. She has served in executive roles for nonprofit, public, and private Fortune 500 entities. Her work has been in urban, suburban, and rural markets, and she has provided consultation for the development of state, regional, and national policies and strategies for advancing communities to thrive and residents to flourish. Joining Don and Christie is Juno Cassandra Booth, or Cassandra, as we lovingly call her. She's a senior relationship manager who joined NeighborWorks America as a relationship manager in 2017. She has more than 25 years of work experience in banking and finance, community and economic development in industries, as well as expertise in creating and administrating a down payment assistance program and lending and underwriting for community development financial lending institutes. She's an expert in consumer, commercial, and mortgage lending, as well as housing and real estate development financing. Cassandra holds several national certifications, including licensed mortgage loan originator with the nationwide mortgage licensing system, accredited financial counselor, and certified housing finance professional through the National Development Council. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to our visionary and fearless leader, Kathy Mann, for remarks, followed by Don Phoenix. Kathy?
Thank you, Ahmed, and thanks everybody for joining. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation tonight. As I hope all of you saw at the end of our session, we had a fabulous video by NeighborWorks America CEO, Marietta Rodriguez, really kind of echoing the very thoughts and sentiments that I hold here and our team here at Inclusiv holds. You know, this is a time for us to be bold. This is a time for bold initiatives, and we've been having discussions with NeighborWorks sort of on and off. You know, I feel like for several years, both through the regions and the, you know, and through the senior leadership and with Marietta and her teams and predecessors, about the importance of trying to figure out how, you know, networks like ours can better connect to work together on addressing this widening racial wealth divide that we're seeing in our communities. And, you know, this is a time, this is the moment for national organizations like Inclusiv and NeighborWorks to collaborate and to find the ways that we can scale more. I think in the years that as we've been sort of discussing, our networks have grown. They've gotten more complex and sophisticated in the way in which they are approaching and designing and developing tools to help people who have historically been excluded from the financial system to be able to access it in new ways. And we've begun kind of cracking the nut of scale, right? How do we get to greater scale? How do we think about kind of taking our I think in the last session, you know, it was talked about that the very high touch services and really figuring out how to scale it. And we've been doing that over the last many years. And so the time is really now for us to think about how do we help improve the financial future of families and communities by making sure that the right products and services are getting into historically underserved and excluded communities. You know, there have been many laws and industry practices that have kept BIPOC individuals and homeowners out of the mainstream and have served to continuously widen the wealth gap. Our new partnership can be part of that solution, particularly in the area of asset accumulation. We're starting very intentionally with a design around bringing Inclusiv and NeighborWorks America partners together and to start building a model. Right now, we're starting a model in Florida, but we want to be taking it to other communities where members of both of our networks have already started meeting and thinking about ways that they can collaborate, how we can be finding the ways that we're queuing up homeowners to be able to benefit from the fabulous supports that NeighborWorks organizations offer in their communities and the fabulous products and services, mission-driven products and services that community development credit unions offer. This is the opportunity to spur the tide of homeownership by offering equitable mortgages and services to minority communities that have been underserved by their local financial institutions. I think as we go through this process, we're hopefully going to start with a recognition and acknowledgement around our alignment on mission and thinking about and sharing with each other in all areas where we're trying to forge these partnerships, really kind of coming together to share the missions that our organizations hold dear and really find kind of alignment there. And then the next step is really sort of thinking through, how do our business models align? What do we need out of partnerships? How do we communicate with partners or potential partners what those needs are? And so we are all committed to figuring this out. And I want to say, you know, I want to encourage everybody to be bold and to be open and to be honest about both what you see is needed in the communities, where the missions align or need to have more clear alignment. And then let's be sort of very thoughtful about what we need as sustainable institutions in our community, and how do we need to figure out kind of making business models and connectivity around our business models work for everybody. So with that, I will turn it over to my very good friend, Don Phoenix.
Well, thank you, Kathy. Well, those are some great comments. You really, really nailed it. I just want to tell you how much of a pleasure for me to be in this space to celebrate this critical strategic partnership between Inclusive and NeighborWorks America's members. You know, for some 40 years, NeighborWorks America has been providing homeownership opportunity to deserving families around the country. We are known for our ability to provide pre and post-purchase counseling. And because it's our philosophy that it's one thing to get them in, we do want them to be prepared to assume that responsibility, but we also want to be with them to make along the way to make certain that we're there to ask some questions, because just making them a homeowner and putting them in the house could be a challenging proposition for many families. So we take pride in our post-purchase counseling as well. You know, many network members have also become very efficient at providing first and second mortgages to families. However, there have not been enough financial resources to meet the demand. Over the years, we have been discussing strategies on how could we increase the flow of capital? How could we really go to scale in these communities? We've discussed credit unions several times and some really good conversations, but we never really got traction. But we were able, when Kathy and I were introduced and we started talking, we realized that she said how much we had in common and that we were all trying to achieve the same thing. So it's so exciting that we have enough organizations in Florida, there are 12, to be able to match her Florida members to really make a difference in Florida. I'm appreciative of Inclusive and NeighborWorks Florida organizations for making this day a reality. This is the beginning of what I believe will be a national partnership. And Kathy, yes, we will get to scale. Thank you. Ahmed?
Well, thank you so much, Don and Kathy, just for sharing those comments. That came from the heart. And I think that's been the biggest difference when we talk about banking versus credit unions. Credit unions speak from the heart. We work from the heart. We're motivated from that heart. And clearly, I think everyone who has been as a part of this and wants to see it continue can feel that. You know, hearing the additional comments that Kathy touched on, you know, home ownership, it's the primary path to building household wealth, you know, in the US. And, you know, it's no surprise to say that it's been out of reach for the marginalized and for people of color for far too long. You know, and as we grapple with racial equity across all segments of our society, you know, the systems that have enabled middle-class, predominantly white households to buy homes through long-term, fixed-rate, affordable loans still remains out of reach for African-American, Latinx, and Native American homeowners. Structural barriers in the US have created profound racial inequalities made worse by the COVID-19 pandemic. The racial wealth gap, you know, puts a strain on families' economic mobility and restricts the US economy. And there's something still very unfair about fair housing. And that's where Inclusive's commitment toward advancing affordable home ownership looks to level the playing field. Home ownership is an essential element of financial independence for low and moderate income people, and it's core to Inclusive's mission, complemented with NeighborWorks. Credit unions have an important role in home ownership financing and counseling as part of their historic commitment to serving people who may have been excluded from loans by banks or other lending institutions due to discrimination and systemic inequalities. Inclusive Mortgage established a secondary market for member credit unions mortgage loans to LMI members. And our initiatives aim to increase community development credit unions recognition as a source of responsible mortgage financing and to expand credit unions' capacity as mortgage lenders and providers of accurate and consistent homeownership counseling. I'm pleased to share with you the composition of Inclusive Mortgage's portfolio. 53% of mortgages are held by Black, Hispanic, and Asian homeowners, significantly above the national average, and 40% of mortgages are held by white homeowners. To achieve national scale that Don spoke about and activate greater lending capacity, Inclusiv is continuing to grow and deepen its successful secondary market for non-conforming mortgages outside of the credit box, originated through network members. And the Inclusiv network, it consists of more than 400 members, including yourselves, and associates who lend deep in their communities, the underserved and often credit-challenged borrowers. So we welcome you to become part of this growing movement and celebrate the partnership with NeighborWorks of America as a strong ally. That said, I'd like to turn the session over to our sponsor and partner, Dr. Christie Cade. Christie?
Good afternoon, and thanks, Ahmed, Kathy, and Don. I am truly delighted to be here on a personal and professional level. I am a member of a credit union, and so being here to see us come together and see this partnership, I know the benefit of all that credit unions offer for me and my family, all of the financial training and support and resources and products and services. So I am really, really delighted to be here, along with one of our NeighborWorks members, who is also one of your members, Hope Credit Union out of Jackson, Mississippi. So thank you so much for having us. As you heard already, that partnership is really important to NeighborWorks, for we have deep-rooted relationships throughout the nation, and most of that is in partnerships between residents and community leaders and financial institutions. Next slide, please. These efforts were led by a community leader over 40 years ago. Dorothy Richardson really collaborated with local government, financial institutions to establish the first neighborhood housing services that was right there in the communities in Pittsburgh, with funding and partnership aimed toward creating affordable housing and fostering homeownership for communities of color. This partnership was the foundation of NeighborWorks America and our network of housing and community development corporations throughout the US. For more than 40 years, that's right, over 40 years, the Neighborhood Reinvestment Corporation, which is our corporate name, a national nonprofit known as NeighborWorks America, has strived to make every community a place of opportunity. As Don and Kathy mentioned, we're going to start our partnership in Florida, but we do look forward to scaling this across the United States. Next slide, please. Our network is a network of excellence, which includes over 250 organizations in every state, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. Next slide. The network provides residents with in their communities with affordable homeownership, with affordable rental housing as well, financial counseling and coaching, which you'll hear more about in a few minutes, community building through resident engagement and resident leadership on the boards of these corporations across the country. And as we mentioned, not just partnership, but collaborations in the areas of health, employment, education, and housing, a real comprehensive approach to helping communities be communities of opportunities. Next slide, please. NeighborWorks' role in helping this network of organizations is to offer grant funding, peer exchange, technical assistance, and training for the organizations to strengthen both the enterprise of the organization and their lines of business. Not only do we support this network, we also support local organizations, other nonprofits in the community development arena, state housing finance agencies, local housing finance agencies, and others who are interested in growing professionally in knowledge around affordable housing and comprehensive community development, and collaborating to advance communities in any way that we can. We know that it takes a village to raise a community, so we collaborate and partner to make that happen. With the resources and support that we provide to the NeighborWorks network, they leverage millions of dollars in investments to create affordable homes, whether they are multifamily or single family, commercial development, provide resources to help families with the down payment assistance that they need to purchase a home, as well as providing resources and services to residents and renters who are looking to address their financial capability as well as financial mobility needs. So a collaboration with financial institutions, credit unions is very important to helping us advance the work of the network and create opportunities in the communities they serve. Cassandra is going to share more about our national home ownership strategies and how we have advanced the work through the network to reach families that are looking to become homeowners in communities. Cassandra?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Christie. I'm also a credit union member, so glad to be. One of the things that I like to point out as a key priority for NeighborWorks is we've made our goal to ensure successful, sustainable home ownership for people of all income levels and backgrounds. We've made that a goal. For those that are interested in becoming homeowners, they have access to trained certified homeownership counselors through our network of NeighborWorks network. Many of our network members are homeownership centers, which are like one-stop shop for homeownership. Other network members provide access to homeownership counseling as one of their core lines of businesses. Homeownership counselors are able to provide one-on-one assistance to help educate and empower consumers to ensure that they have the tools, the capacity, and options to make good choices about whether they buy or not to buy and what to buy, financing plans, and even home maintenance. A recent study that was commissioned by NeighborWorks America showed homeowners who work with our network organizations are 1/3 less likely to become 90 days or more days delinquent. They are less likely to become 90 days or more days delinquent during the first 2 years of homeownership than those who do not. Next slide, please. So those that are interested in becoming homeowners have access to trained counselors and certified homeownership counselors throughout the network, as I said. We focus on sustaining homeownership and working tirelessly to ensure homeowners are prepared and ready to buy and to keep their homes. As a response to the pandemic this past year, many of our network members have pivoted and they're offering online and telephone homeownership counseling. They were able to pivot very quickly to be able to come up to speed to continue to provide those services to those clients. As an example, some of the impact from our last year, if you could move to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. Our network was able to create over 23,386 new homeowners. We preserved over 9,000 new homeowners and supported families in creating affordable housing and counseling in the total of 438,571. So you see our network, it provides a tremendous service in providing housing counseling to those that are interested in purchasing homes. And even if they're not interested in purchasing homes at this time, they have access to home buyers education as well as home buyers counseling and financial capability, which are all needed to support families in their journey. So I'll turn it back over to Christie or Ahmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassandra. Ahmed, if you don't mind going back one slide, I just want to put a little emphasis on what Cassandra just shared. While 23,000 households became homeowners in 2020 in the midst of a pandemic, There are 438,000 households waiting for this partnership with Inclusiv. Families that are being counseled, as Cassandra shared, that are working on their financial capability to be able to move forward through the process of homebuyer education and then to become homeowners. But many of them, to your, the information you provided, Ahmed, need products and services that aren't offered through standard financial institutions or standard pathways toward homeownership. So they need to be able to establish financial relationships and have relationships with credit unions that can get them to a point of understanding what it means to be bankable with a partner that's supporting them and their households, as well as having affordable mortgages to help them purchase a home. So we are delighted that this partnership will be able to dive into the 438,000 households, kicking it off in Florida, and see more, that number of 23,000 households from last year's, that's 1 year increase. And I would just want to say, Ahmed, let's double it, right? So to the next slide, please. Any questions for us regarding NeighborWorks America? We wanted to open up to see if you had any questions for us.
While our guests are marinating on this tremendous meal that's actually just been served up before them, you know, the one word that just I keep hearing over and over again in my head is opportunity. Opportunity. Credit unions are always looking for opportunities, and here we have where what's been out of reach is a facility that will buy or provide liquidity for the non-conforming mortgage holder. And, you know, how is it that, you know, so many of our members fall into this non-conforming space? And if we're not intentional about it, they're going to be served by someone else who is not going to have their best interest at heart. I'm going to go back again to the heart of the matter. Credit unions have that heart because credit unions are about responsible lending, ensuring that they not only become homeowners, but they keep that home. And it does create that generational wealth because it creates equity that then creates down payment assistance for the next generation, and so forth and so on. So yeah, I cannot say enough about how excited I am about putting all of these pieces together, and with our Florida collaborative being the one to really create that model and then drive it throughout the rest of the country.
Yes, we are excited as well, Ahmed.
And so we'd love to hear from you if you have, again, any questions or comments, and perhaps even if it's a wow, or as Don and Kathy shared, you know, it's about time. Well, it's about time, but it's the right time. You know, I can't emphasize that enough, that I believe, as Kathy had shared, you know, this is your moment. And with so much, you know, at risk right now, to not have programs in place, whether it be education or whether it actually be that credit box solution, this is that opportunity for you right now to be able to pair up with Inclusiv and with the NeighborWorks teams for the formulation of a credit policy that can be supported through a secondary market relationship with Inclusiv. And we do have a question. We have a question actually from Kirsten Johnson.
Yep.
Chriselle, do you want to go with that? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm wondering if you would like to talk, or maybe NeighborWorks would like to talk about your locations. The question was, is NeighborWorks in Arizona? And then also, to dig in a little bit further, can you talk a little bit about the collaboration that's currently happening in Florida?
Absolutely. Yes, NeighborWorks is in Arizona in several locations. We will have information at the end of this session on how you can get in touch with us. You can go to our website at neighborworks.org and find out more about the network across the United States and in the District of Columbia. The second question related referenced the Florida Collaborative. Well, we're really excited about this collaborative. As Don mentioned, we have 12 network organizations throughout the state of Florida. We actually cover the entire state. Within that network are single-family housing developers, housing counselors, network organizations that are working with renters to prepare them for homeownership. They are developing affordable rental housing to make sure that families are stabilized prior to becoming homeowners. And also working with the BIPOC communities throughout the state of Florida, ensuring that they understand the process to financial capability, financial mobility, and homeownership. With those organizations, we are collaborating with Inclusiv to identify the pathways to affordable mortgages, mortgages that have criteria that not necessarily you'll find with any other mortgage lender. Many mortgage lenders require you to have an extensive credit file before you can purchase a home. But many of the home buyers that are coming through our program may establish limited credit background. So we're going to work together to establish those programs, those mortgages for those families, those 438,000 plus families that are going through housing counseling, financial capability, to align them with the products that the Inclusiv members have. And then I'll turn it over to Ahmed to talk more about some of the products that you may have.
And thank you for that insight, Christie. Again, speaking outside of the box, it's all too often, for, credit unions to stay in that comfort zone, to, say that we're about affordable homeownership and making access, but then there is that risk aversion, risk mitigation, or risk avoidance altogether. Through Inclusiv and what our history has been, really looking to see how we can build a credit profile by using alternative credit. You might see that your member has a car loan at a dealer, buy here, pay here, or perhaps they have something like rent or a cell phone bill, something that's documented, but it actually shows and demonstrates that they are honoring an obligation. Well, Inclusiv will work with those alternative trade lines to build that credit history that becomes necessary to make a determination of whether or not this person is a good candidate for a mortgage. And again, I was in the credit union space, chief lending officer for almost 30 years. So I know, you've got to balance out, you've got a particular risk concentration that you have to be concerned about when it comes to colorful credit, et cetera. But to have that opportunity where you can originate the loan, keep the relationship with your member, but then sell it to Inclusiv, so you can begin to see how these loans perform, see the track record of it, and then you start to actually portfolio some of these loans. Again, I understand that process. You have a number of different folks that you have to satisfy, not including even examiners when it comes to this. But what we're looking at right now is, how can we say yes? It's too easy to say no. It's too easy with these automated underwriting systems just to have a credit score kick out and not look further to see what is behind that credit score. Is it a medical collection? So Inclusiv works also, through our originations process to see, is this credit score telling the full story? And that's what we want to encourage our members to do by working with us, working with NeighborWorks, to modernize your credit policy, to recognize that things happen, and it should not necessarily be the scarlet letter that now follows someone who, for all other intents and purposes, would qualify for a mortgage. I would just also add, that just looking at some recent statistics where New York usurped San Francisco as becoming the most expensive city for home ownership. New York City's average rent is over $2,800. Contrast that with the average mortgage in New York City of $2,100. So to the question of capacity, the question of whether or not someone has the ability to make those payments, which is usually the biggest issue that we have before us, because homes don't get up and move and hide like cars do. So let's just call it as it would be. There's an opportunity for you right now to see that capacity is there. Now, if you can partner with NeighborWorks, who shared with you how when clients go through their program and go through that process, how much better they perform. What we are doing right now in this conversation is we're removing those systemic barriers that are keeping us from saying yes and giving us more and more opportunities to say why not.
Thank you. I'd also like to add that this partnership is an exciting one because we understand that the pathway to homeownership doesn't start at the mortgage. It starts at financial capability, and working together with the credit unions to help families become financially capable, build their assets, as was mentioned earlier, and have a partner that's not just there for the mortgage, but for the long haul, for the sustainability of the family. NeighborWorks America, our network, actually works with families from financial capability to times when they cannot make their mortgage payments. So we have counselors that are trained on foreclosure intervention and modification. And so we're there for the long haul to see those homeowners not just become homeowners, but be stable and resilient in their home ownership. And working with the credit unions, that would be a great partnership for how our pathways to home ownership and resilient home ownership from beginning until they decide to sell their homes. So we're looking forward to that.
Ahmed, I just want to add that our organizations are also about the business of creating an atmosphere for lending, right? They do a lot of work in community that end up protecting the mortgage over time. So it's not just the lending transaction, but there's other work that they do in community that will be beneficial as a partner. Yes.
All great questions. We had another one that came in from, I believe it was Angela. Can you give an example of how you have partnered with credit unions currently?
I will add a little bit of insight to what Ed was sharing. As we've been working with Hope Credit Union even well before Hurricane Katrina came through, and in partnership with NeighborWorks, we're able to align resources to help with the rebuilding of communities where the credit unions have investments and work collaboratively side by side with the members of the credit union. And that's one way that we have been a partner with a credit union. Secondly, not only do we bring our resources, but we've collaborated with other partners throughout the nation who have been able to provide us with down payment assistance. Hope Credit Union has been a partner with us to help us get that down payment assistance to families who are in areas where there are limited resources for down payment assistance to help them become homeowners. Those homeowners were in the process through Hope's Homeownership Promotion Program, meeting with the counselors, getting them ready to purchase a home. And then through our collaboration with Hope, our other partners and NeighborWorks were able to secure down payment assistance, that asset that was needed to help them become homeowners. We work together to actually get resources to smaller communities so that the developers can build single family homes. As we're helping families get ready to purchase home, there will be a home to purchase as well. So those are some of the ways we've worked with Hope as a credit union, reaching out to their partners with colleges and universities and being very instrumental in the work that they're doing side by side with them and bringing other resources to the community as well.
Thanks, Christie. Is this any better, y'all? Okay, I apologize for that. But I guess where I was going with my comments is, you know, NeighborWorks was with Hope after Hurricane Katrina, invested in some of the first homes that were built before the government even was able to respond. You know, NeighborWorks was with us when we rebuilt homes up in the Mississippi Delta, homes that were literally built to disenfranchise Black voters, that were burning down, that were, you know, had electrical fires. And, you know, Christie just mentioned the down payment assistance program. You know, we were able to reach a significant number of rural homeowners through that program that may not have otherwise been able to get into homes. And this is the model that we're using to advocate for, accessible down payment assistance, the big bill that's moving through Congress right now. And so the last point I would just make is that if we have an opportunity as a network, as an inclusive network, to open the door to a much more robust partnership with NeighborWorks, we got to figure out how to make it work. This and look beyond the transaction, because these three individuals here and others in the organization are social entrepreneurs, always looking at ways to use credit unions, to use community development financial institutions to help the people that are members, the people who live in communities. And so, I would encourage us to, this is, let's figure out how to make this transaction work. And then, I am vouching that for this group and for the organization that they'll figure out additional ways, not just resources, but as thought partners and advocates for the communities that we serve. So again, I can't say enough about the partnership and how excited I am to see these two organizations in the same room and doing it in the South. Little plug there as well. So.
Ahmed, there were a couple of questions about the model. Ed, thank you for that, because as Ed has shared information of how we work with Hope Credit Union, the model is not a rubber stamp. So we're excited about, we've had our very first encounter with both networks working together, and we understand the pathways to homeownership are different from each individual as it is from each credit union. And so the model is, how does the two networks work together with the end goal of, again, creating more homeowners, strengthening the pathway to homeownership, smoothing the pathway to homeownership, and ensuring resilience in homeownership. So through this model, we are going to come out with different ways with inclusive resources and support, and NeighborWorks resources and support to help make that happen in Florida, and then share it with other members throughout, both NeighborWorks and Inclusive.
And thank you. And to that end, Christie, talking about the model, I think it's very important for us to recognize that we cannot approach this with a one-size-fits-all. I think that was the era of what happened, back in the early 2000s when, I won't mention the different GSEs, but we all know who they were, who they are. But I mentioned them in terms of the work because, I was around when they were coming to me asking me to do 120, LTV loans, and just turning the other way, drive-by, whatever. If, we used to call them Fog-A-Mera mortgages, because literally if the borrower could Fog-A-Mera, then they were okay to buy it. We clearly know that that's not what's happening today. But what we're talking about is looking at each credit union's tolerance level, recognizing that there are risk concentration, there is, credit concerns. But the idea is to really just take a step back and understand that we have policies and we have guidelines. How can we look at best practices at each one of our organizations, not simply look at it, but in terms of philosophically, but empirically? And this is where Inclusive can also help, where NeighborWorks can help organizations to modernize and craft these flexible policies and guidelines that can look beyond just the basic credit score, debt to income ratio, loan to value, and recognize that NeighborWorks can tap into down payment assistance resources. Inclusive has a down payment assistance grant that we're making available to network members. Let's look at all of the ways that we can strengthen the ability to create more homeowners. To Don's point, we're talking about home ownership, but what we're really talking about is creating sustainable communities. We're going to create a tax base that is going to take this country from this pandemic and forward. And you can't do it if people are paying rent and drowning in debt as a result of it. But if you create stabilized communities, now you have an investment. Now you have people that are anchored to that community. Their families will be anchored to that community, and they're going to do whatever they can to ensure that that mortgage gets paid. I think there was a question, I wanted to make sure I don't miss anything in the time we have remaining, of whether or not we work with members who have I-10s. And from Inclusiv standpoint, absolutely. Inclusiv has actually a 10-1 ARM program that goes up to 80% LTV for I-10 holders. For those of you who aren't familiar with an I-10, it's an individual taxpayer identification number that is issued by the Internal Revenue Service. So for the concerns about BSA and whether or not you'd be making a loan to someone, who there's going to be concerns about whether or not they should be considered a member, we can share with you an opinion letter from the NCUA that addresses that concern. I would also defer over to Christie as to whether or not NeighborWorks actually has any experience or works with I-10 holders.
The NeighborWorks network consists of some organizations that are direct mortgage lenders, as well as those that package loans for others, originate loans for others. And so it depends on the various programs and the guidelines that are set with those products. So it varies throughout Florida. There are different programs that are available. But that is one of the things that we will be looking at, as well as I think someone mentioned in the chat, community land trust. And so how do we provide mortgages to residents that are looking to purchase homes in community land trust and make those affordable loans where the lender understands the type of purchase that is occurring. So.
And to that question, Angela, absolutely, we'll get that out to you. Chriselle will make a note of your email address and ensure that we get that into your hands. What we also wanted to take this opportunity to do, this has just been such a fun relationship. We're talking about a very, very serious topic here in terms of this partnership, and also expanding home ownership. But we're having fun. I just want to say, we're having so much fun doing this. Collaboration is just a phenomenal thing to do. But we wanted for you just to consider a couple of questions. We're not going to solve everything, on this call tonight. But the idea that we've actually taken the first step forward, I think is very important. And what we call partnership in action, and forgive me, but I think to my grandfather always putting out these pearls of wisdom, and he would say, faith without action is dead. And so to that end, a partnership without action is also dead. But what we wanted to pose to you this evening, and again, and not to have the answers today, but just to ask you, what challenges or barriers does your credit union face in advancing affordable home ownership? And you can put some of these comments into the chat, but this is not going to be the end of this conversation. It's just the beginning of that. We would like to hear from you in that regard. Second to that, we'd like to know what products and services you believe are needed to help you address these challenges. It's not enough to identify that there's a problem, but we want to know, do you know of, or do you believe that if you had a solution, if it's down payment assistance, if it is credit counseling, alternative credit, or a secondary market that could help you address these challenges, we'd like to hear directly from you. And then finally, what ideas do you have on how we can work together to increase home ownership for the LMI households across the nation? Enough, can't be said that you hear that we have 400 credit unions, and credit unions that are mission-oriented, and Inclusiv that is mission-oriented, and NeighborWorks that is mission-oriented, but we still have a racial wealth gap. So clearly, even with all of us on the call, even with all of us and our passion for the credit union movement and increasing affordable home ownership, it's not enough. So we would just like for you to posit these questions. And what we're going to be doing is coming back to you, to the Inclusiv membership at large, with follow-up meetings in this very same vein, so that we can begin to develop solutions. We're going to be starting with the Florida Collaborative, so we can, begin to work out some of these different questions that we have. But we'd also like to hear from you, those of you who have had your shoulder, to the wheel for so many years. Your best practices. We want that to be shared with the rest of our network, so that we can all progress together.
Thank you for that, Ahmed. The answers to these questions will also help us in preparing the community, preparing the residents and potential home buyers. So as we understand together, we're all converging on to one highway to homeownership, if we'll use that term there, Ahmed. So we're delighted for this partnership and very excited about what we're going to learn and what we're going to do and achieve together.
Thank you for that, Christie. I would just like to open the floor to Kathy and Don for any closing remarks before we close out this evening's networking session.
Well, I would just like to thank everybody for taking the time to show up and to stay, right? My little personal story is that I used to run a NeighborWorks organization, as I said, and I figured it out that I needed to have two things that our big credit union had in my hometown, Savannah, Georgia. That is a membership, a captive market, and capital. And so I started on that journey, but I came to work at NeighborWorks before I finished. So this is sort of like finishing up something that I started many years ago, over 25 years, that I would like to see really manifest now. Just want to offer that personal story, yes.
And thank you, Don, for that. Again, just a true gentleman, and I really just thank you just for the couple of calls that we have and your willingness to share, but just to be genuine and authentic about how tied you are to this mission. It shows, and I think everyone who's on the call, if they haven't met you before, now they actually see. So Don Phoenix, everyone, often imitated, never duplicated. The myth, the man, the legend. I can't say much more than that, but I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And I really want to thank our partners from NeighborWorks of America for joining us and sharing their rich history and their passion for expanding home ownership. And if you have any additional questions or would like more information, please avail yourself to the contact information that's provided on this presentation. And please remember to return tomorrow at 10 a.m. for day 2 of the Inclusiv Annual Conference. And don't forget to check out Inclusiv's exhibitor booths throughout the day. I want to wish everyone a very blessed balance of the day or evening if you're on the left coast. And again, just looking forward to working with all of you. And again, Don, Christie, Cassandra, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're just looking forward to knocking it out of the ballpark. Thank you, Chriselle, for your support and everyone that's been on the call.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.